Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, Jam?
Man, I'm surprised at you. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talking. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I went on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
Well, you don't. Go on.
What's happening, my people? It's Cass Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cass Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, the hardest punchers in boxing history. As the family today, got a good one for you today. We're going to talk about some of the hardest punchers in boxing history, exactly what the title says there. And then we're going to look at the hardest puncher ever in each weight class, from heavyweight all the way down to minimum weight, 105. The hardest puncher in each weight class today. Very good show today. I'm excited about it myself. This is my 453rd show. And I think this is about the best show I've ever done. But so for the highlights of boxing history today, we are going to look at the junior welterweight division, 140. The top 10 fighters, currently active fighters in the 140 division. So let's get started with that. Highlights of boxing history. There's 140 pounders right there. There was a Gary Antoine Russell beating of Rayo Venezuela when Gary Antoine got his title. Gary Russell Jr. in the ring this weekend. Excuse me. Yep, Gary Russell Jr. making his return to action this weekend on the undercard of Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios. Now they got me saying Manny's name first. They got Manny's name first like he's the A side. They got me saying it's Mario Barrios versus Manny Pacquiao. Mario Barrios is the champion, so he's the A side. But let's get into it. Currently active top 10 junior welterweights, 140. First, let's look at a little quick history of the division, 140. Okay. Now, created first by the New York Walker Law in 1920, the NBA officially recognized the super lightweight division in 1922. In that same year, Boxing Magazine, Boxing Blade, held a contest for the best fighter in this division, with readers choosing Pinky Mitchell. He would then be crowned the light junior welterweight champion and is considered to be the first official champion in the division. Now, the modern beginnings of the belt was in 1959 when the NBA sanctioned a fight between Carlos Ortiz and Kenny Lane for the vacant World Junior Welterweight Championship. The WBC and the NBA/WBA recognized the same champion up until 1967. Because the NBA turned into the WBA, and the WBC and the WBA recognized the same champion up until 1967. The WBC then stripped Paul Fuji of their belt and crowned Pedro Adig as their new champ after his win against Adolph Pruitt. The IBF's first junior welterweight champion was Aaron Pryor, the Hawk, in 1984. The longest title reign in the division is held by Mexican boxer Julio Cesar Chavez with 12 title defenses. Now, some notable junior welterweight champions throughout history include Tony Canzonieri, Barney Ross, Carlos Ortiz, Nicolino Loesch, Aaron Pryor, Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, and Kostya Tszyu. Okay, so let's look at the active top 10 fighters in the 140-pound division now. Okay, current top 10. Okay, excuse me for one moment. I'm too close to the desk. Wow. Notebook all up in my chest. Damn. Like a kindergartner or something. Okay, here we go. That's much better. The currently active top 10 at 140. Junior flyweight. Okay. Number 1, Teofimo Lopez. Currently holds the WBO and ring titles in the division. Teofimo is currently 22 wins, 1 loss, 13 knockouts. Number 2, Devin Haney. A rising young fighter with an undefeated record. His next scheduled fight is in the welterweight division in November against Brian Norman Jr., the WBO welterweight champion at 147. Devin is currently 32-0 with 15 knockouts. Number 3, junior welterweight Richardson Hitchens. The current IBF champion at 140, known for his technical skills, footwork, and ability to control the pace of a fight. But Hitchens is currently 20 wins, no losses, 8 knockouts. Number 4, Subriel Matias, a 2-time junior welterweight champion from Fajardo, Puerto Rico. Matias currently holds the WBC title in the division. Just got that this month. He has an aggressive style with explosive power. Matias is currently 23 wins, 2 losses, 22 knockouts for a 95.6% knockout rate with Subriel. Number 5, Gary Antoine Russell. With Gary on the right, there on the screen. Gary Antoine Russell comes in at number 5 at 140. Russell is the WBA super lightweight champion. He has a high-pressure, aggressive boxing style, combining relentless pressure with powerful combinations. Gary Antoine currently 19 fights into his professional career, 18 wins, 1 loss, 17 knockouts, 94.4% knockout ratio for Gary Antoine. Not bad at all. 94.4. Gary Antoine gets him up out of there. Number 6, Jack Catterall. Catterall is a prominent contender with a strong record, known for being defensively sound and tremendously skilled. 31 wins, 2 losses, 13 knockouts for Catterall. Number 7, Arnold Barboza Jr., a highly regarded contender who has had a solid boxing career so far. He suffered his first loss in his last fight against Teofimo Lopez in May by unanimous decision. 32 wins, just that 1 loss, 11 knockouts. Number 8, Liam Paro, another top-rated fighter in the division. Paro is a tricky southpaw. He is from Australia. 26 wins, 1 loss, 16 knockouts. Number 9, Albert Puello. Puello is a Dominican boxer who fights out of Las Vegas. Nicknamed La Avispa. He is a 2-time super lightweight champion. 24 wins, 1 loss, 10 knockouts. Rounding out the top 10 at super lightweight, Andy Hiriaka. Hiriaka is an undefeated Japanese boxer. He's the former WBA Asia Pacific super lightweight champion and a promising young fighter. 24 wins, no losses, 19 knockouts, 79.1% knockout ratio, hovering right around 80%. Andy Hiriaka. Okay, so now today, some of the hardest punches in boxing history. Okay, let's get into that. Look at some of the hardest punchers in boxing history. Okay, bear with me for one moment. One moment. Okay. Okay, this is going to be some of the hardest punchers in boxing history today. Get that going for us. As everybody's this is a hump day edition of Cast Sports, the Boxtorian. Okay? We got Foreman, Shavers, we got all of these big heavy hitters today. Let's take a look. All right. Who were the hardest punchers in boxing history? We're getting ready to talk about it. See the man up there on the screen, Big George. He was one of them. And then we're going to look at the hardest puncher from each division today, too. Hardest puncher from each division. Okay, let's go with it. Okay, Big George Foreman. These are some of the hardest punchers in boxing history. Big George Foreman. 76 wins, 5 losses, with 68 knockouts. Okay. 46 of those came in the first 3 rounds. Foreman knocked out Joe Frazier twice. Ken Norton, the Iron Chin George Chuvalo, Jerry Cooney, Ron Lau, Chuck Webner, and Michael Moorer. 89% knockout ratio for Big George. And this was in the golden age of heavyweight. The best period ever for heavyweights, okay? And he was still knocking out top contenders in his 40s. Evander Holyfield said about Big George, he hit me harder than any other fighter, okay? Evander said Big George hit him harder than he had ever been hit before by anybody. 89%, that's not bad at all. For 76 victories. Okay. Big George Foreman. Mike Rim in the building. What's up, Mike Rim? We are talking about some of the hardest punches of all time. Only one you missed was Big George, Mike, so far. Just started. And we looked at the super lightweight division today, 140, top 10. Teofimo Lopez is number 1. He's a mental case, but he is a very talented fighter. Very talented, skilled fighter, Teofimo is. If you can get past the craziness, he always spewing. Okay, Big George. Next, we have, of course, who else? Ernie Shavers. Ernie Shavers. That's him and Ali. He just caught Ali with something. Ernie Shavers. 74 wins, 14 losses, 1 draw, with 68 knockouts, and 51 of those in the first 3 rounds. Shavers knocked out Kenny Norton, Jimmy Ellis, Jimmy Young, and Joe Bugner. Ernie had a 92% knockout ratio. And Ali said, Ernie hit me so hard, it shook my kinfolk back in Africa. Okay? That's hard. Wow. And a career, 92% knockout ratio. Wow. For Ernie. Okay, these are some of the hardest punches of all time. All right. After Ernie, we have The Rock. Rocky Marciano. Rocky Marciano, talking about hardest punches of all time. Got to have Rocky Marciano on there. 49-0 with 43 knockouts. Marciano knocked out Joe Louis, Ezzard Charles, Archie Moore, Jersey Joe Walcott twice, Lisa Vold, and Roland Lastarza. The Rock had an 88% knockout ratio. Only one fighter ever went 15 rounds with The Rock, and that was the great Ezzard Charles. And then in the rematch, guess what happened? The Rock knocked him out. Okay? I was saying, Mike, this is my 453rd show, and I think this is probably the best one I ever did right here. But people don't know what they're missing today. This is probably my best show ever today. One of the greatest punches of all time. But Mike Rim said he ain't gonna miss it. Appreciate you, Mike. Okay, after The Rock, we have Go back a ways now. Bob Fitzsimmons. Listen to this guy, Bob Fitzsimmons. Bob Fitzsimmons was called the Fighting Blacksmith, and he won 57 of his 61 official fights by knockout. Say official because back then record keeping was not too good, and probably had way more than 61, but officially 61 on the record. Okay, those guys were fighting every week, sometimes twice a day. So he probably definitely had way more than 61, but officially 61, and he knocked out 57 of his opponents in those 61 official fights. That's a 93% knockout ratio. Okay, 93%. Fitzsimmons had signature knockouts of Jack Non Periel Dempsey, that's the middleweight Jack Dempsey, Gentleman Jim Corbett, and Tom Sharkey. Ned Fleischer, founder of the Ring magazine, regarded Fitzsimmons as the greatest pound-for-pound knockout puncher in boxing history. That's high praise. Ned Fleischer, founder of the Ring magazine, said Bob Fitzsimmons was the best pound-for-pound knockout puncher ever. Okay. Fleischer also considered Fitzsimmons the best left hooker and body puncher among the heavyweights, even though he was really a middleweight. Okay, started his career at middleweight. Fitzsimmons was the first middleweight champion to win the heavyweight title, and he and Roy Jones Jr. are the only heavyweight champions to drop down and win the light heavyweight title. Fitzsimmons defeated top heavyweight contenders Peter Marr, Gus Goulin, and Tom Sharkey by knockout. He's the number 8 pound-for-pound puncher of all time, according to the Ring magazine. Big bad Bob Fitzsimmons. Next, we can't leave him off. Iron Mike Tyson. Iron Mike Tyson. Greatest knockout punchers of all time. Iron Mike Tyson. 50 wins, 6 losses, with 44 knockouts. Tyson knocked out Larry Holmes, Michael Spink, and Frank Bruno twice. 88% knockout ratio. Okay? And you know what Mike said? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Then the plan goes out the window. Mike said you knocked that plan out of him. Iron Mike Tyson. So the greatest the hardest punchers of all time. You know he was coming, didn't you, Mike? This guy, you knew he was coming. The Big Bear, Sonny Liston. The Big Bear, Sonny Liston. 50 wins, 4 losses, with 38 knockouts. Liston knocked out Floyd Patterson in the first round twice. The fights were almost carbon copies of each other. He knocked him out in the second fight just 4 seconds later than he did in the first fight, almost at the exact same time in the round, just 4 seconds later. Okay? He also knocked out Zora Fowley, Nino Valdez, Chuck Webner, and Cleveland Williams. Twice. Knocked Cleveland Williams out twice. Had a 78% knockout ratio for Sonny, the Big Bear. And Big George Foreman said about Sonny Liston? Big George said, Sonny was the only man I ever faced who could force me to go backwards because they sparred quite a bit. Big George said Sonny was the only one that ever made him go back. And that takes some doing, make Big George Foreman go back. Mike said nobody told him to duck. He definitely should have ducked that one. But that takes some doing. Make Big George Foreman go back. And Big George said only one man did that. And that was Sonny, the Big Bear, Sonny Liston. Okay? These are some of the hardest knockout punches of all time. Gentleman Jerry Cooney. 28 wins, 3 losses, with 24 by knockout. In successive fights, back to back to back, he knocked out Jimmy Young, Ron Lau, and Ken Norton. Back to back to back. Cooney was 6'6" and had a devastating left hook to the body, along with a great stiff jab. He was named by George Foreman as one of the 3 hardest punchers he faced. Cooney had an 86% knockout ratio. He's number 53 pound for pound on the Ring Magazine's list of greatest punchers of all time, number 53. But that might be kind of low for Jerry. Yeah, 53. Wow. Yeah, I think that might be low. But then remember I was saying when I was talking about Ken Norton, we talked about the underrated fighters Monday, I believe. They say he had a suspect chin, but he got knocked out 4 times. But by George Foreman, Ernie Shavers, and Jerry Cooney. So if somebody get knocked out by those 3 out of 4 knockouts in their career, how can you say they have a bad chin? That's crazy. The 4th one was by some guy when Ken was just beginning his career. But George Foreman, Jerry Cooney, and Ernie Shavers, that does not signify somebody having a bad chin getting knocked out by them. Because a lot of people got bad chins then because those 3 knocked out a lot of people. A whole lot of people. Okay? Smoking Joe Frazier. There he is. Smoking Joe Frazier. What's up, Defiant Arnie One? Defiant Arnie One, we are talking about the hardest punches of all time. And I was telling Mike, this is my 453rd show, and I think this is my best show ever, right here today. And everybody is somewhere else, listening to who's beefing on Twitter and who wore to the ring. That's what they rather listen to. But okay, but let's continue. Is they somewhere else listening to that nonsense? But let's go. Your 453rd show. I think this is my best one of all time. Okay, that's some of the hardest punches of all time. Smoking Joe Frazier makes the grade. Smoking Joe Frazier. 32 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, 27 knockouts. Smoking Joe had knockouts of George Chuvalo, Jimmy Ellis twice, Bob Foster, Doug Jones, Eddie Macon, Buster Mathis, and Jerry Curry twice. Smoking Joe had an 84% knockout ratio too. And this was in the golden age of heavyweights, greatest era ever of heavyweight. And he didn't knock out George Chuvalo. Nobody did that, but he stopped him. And that takes some doing. George Chuvalo had the greatest chin ever. I think he was stopped about twice or something, but they all were never off his feet. Had some TKOs, but no knockouts. No on the mat for 10 count knockouts. But Smoking Joe stopped him. And that takes some doing right there to stop George Chuvalo. Smoking Joe Frazier did it. And he had a short career because of that style, that swarming style. You know, it takes a lot out of you. They don't have long careers. You take a lot of punishment because you're always in the pocket fighting. And you're taking 3 or 4 punches to get 1 in all your fights. So yeah, just like Rocky, 8-year career. Smoking Joe, same way. Career cut short because of the style. And Nate says, guess who we still talking about? George Chuvalo. Had a great chin and power. George did. George Chuvalo. But salute Defiant Arnie One. Good to see you today. George Chuvalo, 73 wins, 18 losses, 2 draws, with 63 knockouts. Chuvalo had knockouts of Doug Jones and Jerry Curry, just to name it, and many others. Those were the big names. 2 heavyweights from that golden era again. Chuvalo fought in the golden era. 86% knockout ratio for big George Chuvalo. And again, in the golden age of heavyweights, Boom Boom Chuvalo once knocked out 4 opponents in a single night. Let me say that again. George Boom Boom Chuvalo once knocked out 4 opponents in a single night during a heavyweight tournament held by the legendary Jack Dempsey. He didn't knock Jack Dempsey out. Jack Dempsey held the tournament. You know, Jack Dempsey was retired, but still actively involved in boxing. They had this tournament, and George Chuvalo knocked out 4 of them in one night. And Muhammad Ali said about George Chuvalo, he's the toughest guy I ever faced. That's from Muhammad Ali. Said George Chuvalo was the toughest guy he ever been in the ring with. Not George Foreman, not Sonny Liston, not Joe Frazier. George Chuvalo. Okay? All right. Next. He's talking about some of the hardest punches of all time. The Brown Bomber. Joe Louis. That's him on the left. Yes, from that fight we talked about yesterday, him and Billy Conn. When Billy Conn had it, all Billy Conn had to do was finish, but he got greedy. Y'all heard it yesterday. Almost had Joe out of there in the 12th round. Jack Blackburn, when Joe got to the corner after 12, said, Joe, you need a knockout. All Billy Conn had to do was bring it home, but he couldn't do it. He thought he had Joe Louis, went back out there in round 13 and went straight up into the pocket. He thought he was going to get Joe out of there, but he got caught. And then Joe took him out. But a great fight. Great fight. George Chuvalo. No, Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber is next. Joe Louis. The Fine Arnie One says, I got told by a YouTuber last night that no Chuvalo, that he's struggling with Alzheimer's disease. Oh yeah, prayers out to George Chuvalo. Yeah, wow. I didn't even know he was still living, the Fine Arnie One. Wow. That's what it is. Wow, okay. But yeah, prayers go out to George Chuvalo, the greatest ten of all time. That George Chuvalo. Had some TKO stoppages, but was never off his feet in his career. Mm-hmm. Now the Brown Bomber, 66 wins, 3 losses, with 52 knockouts for the Brown Bomber. Okay, the Brown Bomber held the heavyweight belt for a record 12 years and 25 title defense, and had signature knockouts of Max Baer, Jim Braddock, Primo Carnera, Billy Conn twice. And he did fight again. Joe got him out of there in the 8th round next time. It was nothing like the first fight. He knocked out John Henry Lewis, Lisa Vold, Max Smelling, Jack Sharkey, and Jersey Joe Walcott twice. Now, Lewis had a 79% knockout ratio. And Joe Louis is the #1 pound-for-pound puncher of all time, according to the Ring magazine. Okay. Historian Dave Bachtal said, Joe Louis had the greatest combination of speed and power of any boxer in history, in any division. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Mr. Bachtal, he's a historian. Not a historian. Okay, next. Is the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey. The Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey. 68 wins, 6 losses, 9 draws, with 53 knockouts. The Manasseh Mauler had a lethal left hook and signature knockouts of Jack Sharkey, Louis Firpo, Georgette Carpenter, Jess Willett, Gunboat Smith, and Battling Levinsky. He knocked Louis Firpo down 9 times, and the fight only lasted 2 rounds. No, 10 times. Louis knocked him down once in the first round, then he knocked Louis down 10 times in 2 rounds. Finished him in the second. And Jack Dempsey don't get talked about a lot for his power, but yeah. Dempsey had a 78% knockout ratio, right? Number 7 pound for pound puncher of all time, according to the Ring magazine. And I'm just saying he was underrated, and they're gonna say number 7. But yeah, you still don't hear when you talk about Jack Dempsey, you don't hear power a lot. Very skilled boxer too. Okay. He was one of the first ones that brought skill into it at a time when they were just standing there going toe to toe back then, around his era, you know. One of the first ones, him and Joe Gans, put a little science into it. Now Dempsey is underrated. Like I was saying, underrated when it comes to this. He had 27 first round knockouts. Look what he did to Jess Willard and Louis Furco, who were both much bigger. When Dempsey passed away in May of 1983, David Brinkley said on NBC Nightly News that Dempsey might have had the hardest pair of fists in history. The great Sam Langford said Dempsey was as fast as Jim Corbett and hit twice as hard as Jim Jeffrey. Jack Sharkey, who fought both Dempsey and Joe Louis, said Dempsey punched harder. Like I was saying, he's underrated when it comes to power. What most people don't know about Jack Dempsey is that his biceps at 16 1/4 inches and his forearms at 14 inches were roughly the same size as George Foreman's arm. Okay, Dempsey was much smaller, but his biceps and forearms were the same size as Big George Foreman. Dempsey also had a 46-inch chest. Dempsey stood 6'1" and had a 77-inch reach. Okay, not the 73-inch reach, which was reported. Okay, 77-inch reach. Finally, legendary sports writer Grantland Rice said Dempsey was the greatest puncher and attacking star he had ever seen in sports. Rice said Dempsey's speed of hand as well as foot is what made him such a dangerous opponent. And Rice knew what he was talking about. This man covered sports from 1901 to his death in 1954. He had a nationally syndicated column called The Spotlight. This man, Grantland Rice, covered sports for 53 years. Okay? 53 years. Wow. And here's another one that gets underrated when it comes to power. And we're going to dig deep into this. Muhammad Ali. We're going to go deep on this one. Because Muhammad Ali is very underrated when it comes to power. Very underrated. He belongs on this list. When you're talking hardest punchers of all time, Muhammad, let's talk about it. Because he's very underrated when it comes to power. It has often been said Ali was not a power puncher or lacked true knockout power. Yes, and some people believe the earth is flat. But facts are facts. And Ali had a 23-fight stretch in which he was 23-0 with 20 knockouts. That's an 87% knockout ratio in that stretch. You don't not have power and win 20 of 23 fights by knockout, almost 90% rate, at a 90% rate. Okay? And check this out. 17 of those 20 knockouts came in the first 7 rounds. Despite the fact that Ali was undoubtedly toying with his opponents and delaying knockouts in order to make his predictions come true. Okay? Ali could have had a lot higher knockout ratio, a lot more knockouts, but he carried some people rounds so his predictions. He was famous for making predictions. And he carried some fighters extra rounds so his predictions could come true. Okay? Then consider who Ali knocked out in the greatest era ever, the golden age of heavyweight. Listen to who he knocked out. The seemingly invincible Sonny Liston twice. Okay? 2-time heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson. Okay? The longest reigning light heavyweight champion of all time, Archie Moore. Okay? The unchained Oscar Bonavita. Henry Cooper twice, Zora Farley, Jerry Quarry, Cleveland Williams, Jimmy Ellis, and Carl Mildenberger. Ali was the only fighter to stop Oscar Vina in his 68 fight career. And Oscar Bonavena fought all of them back in that golden era. Ali was the only one to stop him. And this is during the greatest era in heavyweight history. The earth is not flat. Tomatoes are not poisonous. And Muhammad Ali could knock you out in the blink of an eye in his prime. But like I said, he would delay the knockout in order to make his predictions come true. Okay? Now, most people don't recognize that among many of Ali's unconventional technical details was the way he generated power. He combined that uncanny speed he had and the timing with great torque and acceleration on the back end of the shot. And while he didn't have the heavy payload of a Chavez or a Foreman, Ali produced a sudden, jolting acceleration upon impact, as if his shots resonated within his target at a higher frequency. Okay? Now, instead of flying several feet and falling, or their heads unpleasantly snapping around from the sheer force, like a Foreman punch would do you, Ali's victims tended to freeze suddenly, as if they had just got electrocuted, knees locking up as though having a brief seizure. Or some just simply went to sleep. Zora Farley commented on the great snap in Ali's shots. He said, they fuzz up your mind, right? The stricken fighter doesn't simply have trouble getting his legs under him after Ali punch, but rather has trouble telling up from down. You can see Frazier's, Liston's, and Norton's, and many others' legs tremble different than the usual signs of being stunned. Watch how one short, lightning right hand from Ali did more damage to Ron Lau than any of Foreman's giant clubbing shots. Okay? One lightning fast short shot from Ali did more damage than any of Foreman's giant clubbing shots. Few fighters had similar mechanics on their shot. The physics just simply operated differently for Muhammad Ali. Okay? All right. Lennox Lewis. Talking about some of the hardest punches of all time. Lennox Lewis. Lennox the Lion Lewis. Okay? And next, we're going to talk about the hardest puncher ever in each weight class. From heavyweight to 105. The hardest puncher ever in each weight class. And we got a special section on George Foreman and Sonny Liston. We got to go deep on them too. Right? We got a special section on George Foreman and Sonny Liston coming up. But Lennox Lewis, 41 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, 32 knockouts. Lennox the Lion Lewis had knockouts of Mike Tyson, Frank Bruno, Andrew Galata, Oliver McCall, Tommy Morrison, Asim Rockman, and Donovan Ruddick. Lennox had a 78% knockout ratio. He's the number 33 pound-for-pound puncher of all time, according to the Ring magazine. Sam McVeigh. 78 wins, 18 losses, 13 draws, 60 knockouts, 77% knockout ratio. He was nicknamed the Oxnard Cyclone. Cyclone, Stan McVeigh. Tommy Morse. Tommy makes the list of the hardest punches. Yes, he does. Tommy Morse. 48 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, with 42 knockouts. Morrison had first-round knockouts of James Quick Tillis and Pinklin Thomas. He also knocked out Carl the Truth Williams and Donovan Razor Ruddock. Tommy Duke Morrison won. He had 88% knockout ratio. Okay. He once knocked out Joe Hip while fighting with a broken hand and a broken jaw. He also beat Big George Foreman by unanimous decision. That was the second coming of George Foreman. But they rant and rave about how he beat Michael Moorer. So nope, we can't. We got to keep the same energy. And Tommy Morrison beat him. Okay? So when he beat Michael Moorer, no one was saying, but he was 40 and all this. Nope. You got to keep the same energy. He beat Big George Foreman, Tommy Morrison, by decision. Okay. Deontay Wilder. Yeah, Deontay makes the list. Deontay Wilder. Okay. 43 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 42 knockouts. Wait a minute, that's not right. That's not right. Bear with me for one moment. Let me get the Bronx Bombers record for us. The Bronx Bomber. Oh, come on. That is not right. I know he got more fights, a couple more than that. Okay, yeah, he's currently come on. Please come on. Okay, yeah. Here we go. 44 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. Yeah. His last 2, well, he won his last one, but he took L's in the other one. 43 knockouts though, still got an excellent knockout ratio, which is so we got say about Deontay. That's 97.7% knockout ratio with Deontay. Okay, let's get back to it. 44 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, 43 by knockout. Only one man went the distance with Devastator Tyson Fury draw, remember? Okay, there we go. There we go. Yeah. Now Deontay Wilder, 98% of his victories by knockout. But Wilder's knockouts have not come against the same class of opponents as most of the other fighters on this list. Okay? Have not come against the same class of opponents. That's significant because they certainly have not. No. Vladimir Klitschko. There's both of them because they're both on here. Vladimir Klitschko first. 64 wins, 5 losses, with 53 knockouts. Dr. Steelhammer had knockouts over Chris Bird, Ray Mercer, and Asim Rockman. His right cross has been called among the most aesthetically perfect punches in boxing history. 83% knockout ratio, but against the same level of competition. Not just like Wilder. This not against the same level of competition as most of the other fighters on this list. Okay. And then, yeah, Vitaly. Told you they both on here. Vitaly Klitschko. Okay, Vitaly. 45 wins, 2 losses, 41 knockouts. 91% knockout ratio. Dr. Iron Fist, he won his first 27 fights by knockout. Okay. Cleveland Williams, some of the hardest punchers of all time. Cleveland Williams, 82 wins, 13 losses, 2 draws, with 62 knockouts. The Big Cat was named as one of the 3 hardest punchers faced by George Foreman, who apparently sparred with him. Sonny Liston called the Big Cat the hardest puncher he ever faced. 76% knockout ratio, number 49 pound for pound puncher of all time, according to the Ring magazine. Okay, Elmer Ray. Elmer Ray. Elmer Ray, that's the Big Cat. Elmer Ray is next. Some of the hardest punchers of all time. Elmer Ray. Elmer Ray was nicknamed Kid Violent. Kid Violent, right? Wow. 69 knockouts and 98 wins. That's a 70% knockout ratio. Number 44 pound for pound puncher of all time, according to Ring magazine. Elmer Ray. You had to know he was coming. Sam Langford, aka the Boston Bone Crusher and the Boston Terror, has signature knockouts over Harry Wills, Gunboat Smith, Joe Jeanette, and Sam McVeigh. Langford's opponents all agreed he was the hardest hitter they'd ever faced. Langford had 126 knockouts and 210 wins, 60% knockout ratio in the 100 knockout club. But there were rumors that he was sometimes instructed not to knock out his opponent. He fought in that era. A lot of racism and stuff, you know. He didn't want to knock out the white fighters, but you know, it is what it is. But when Langford was in a hurry to catch a train, he could floor his opponents at will. Okay? Sam Langford is the number 2 pound for pound puncher of all time, according to Ring magazine. And he started out at lightweight, number 2 all time, behind Joe Louis. And never weighed over 185 in his career. Average weight was around 150. Number 2 all time when it came to knockouts, though, the Boston Bone Crusher, Sam Langford. Okay, let's talk about Oscar Bonavena, Argentinian. Mr. Oscar. Like the referee got something to say. Ali got something to say to him, too. Oscar Bonavena. Oscar Bonavena had a 76% knockout ratio during the golden age of heavyweight, hovering right around 80%. He fought in that era of the greatest era ever in the 70s. Now, Ringo Bonavena could be underrated when it comes to knockouts. He was 58 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw. And consider who he lost to: Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier twice, Floyd Patterson, Dora Fowley, Ron Lyle, and Jimmy Ellis. In another era, Bonavena's record might be something like 65 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. He had signature wins over George Chuvalo, Dora Fowley, and Carl Mildenberger. He dropped the great Joe Frazier twice in the second round of their first fight, and he was only stopped once by the immortal Muhammad Ali. Only time he ever got stopped was by Muhammad Ali. Okay? The great Oscar Bonavena, one of the greatest fighters to come out of Argentina. Ooh, that rhyme. Bob Foster. He was a big, tall, light heavyweight. Bob Foster. Bob Foster was a hard-hitting light heavyweight who also fought as a heavyweight. He's the number 17 pound for pound puncher of all time. according to the Ring magazine. Yep, number 17. Archie Moore, the mongoose / old mongoose. Remember, he fought so long they had to start calling him the old mongoose. Archie Moore, aka the mongoose / old mongoose, is the number 4 pound-for-pound puncher of all time, according to the Ring magazine. Another light heavyweight. But he struggled against the better heavyweight with losses to Muhammad Ali, Rocky Marciano, Floyd Patterson, and Ezra Charles 3 times. But he was really a light heavyweight, to be fair. Went to heavyweight to get fights, because Archie went 16 years before he got his first title shot, right? But when he got it, he held it for 10 years, okay? Because he knew if he lost it, he probably would never get another one. But the great Archie Moore. We're winding down now. We're going to get to the greatest puncher, best puncher, hardest puncher in every weight class. Hardest puncher in every weight class. Floyd Patterson. Ooh. I'm glad I did start doing this a little early. Wow. Now, before 3:30. Floyd Patterson has been underrated in the power department. Through his first 57 fights, he was 49 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw, with 37 knockouts for a 76% knockout ratio. He had signature knockouts of Ingemar Johansson twice, Archie Moore, and Henry Cooper. And finally, to round the list out, hardest punchers of all time, another light heavyweight, Michael Spinks, who did fight at heavyweight. Michael the Jinx Spinks. Michael Spinks was a light heavyweight champion who became the heavyweight champion by defeating Larry Holmes. Spinks, whose nickname was Slim, weighed just 200 pounds for the fight against Holmes, while Holmes weighed 221.5 pounds. Spinks is the number 42 pound-for-pound puncher of all time, according to Ring magazine. Okay? So let's look at the hardest puncher from each weight division. I hope I can find it. I'm going to find it. Just bear with me for a moment, please. Hardest puncher for each weight division. Okay. I think it's along the same line somewhere. This is Hump Day. A lot of people today. Okay. Yeah, coming up on it now. Tomorrow is going to be, we're going to talk about boxing in Algeria. We're looking at some different countries on Thursdays now, okay? Where is it? A nice little history on boxing in Algeria. Okay, just bear with me for a minute. Listen to the music. And we got a little piece on Sonny Liston and George Foreman. We got to talk about them a little bit more than everybody else. Okay, here we go. Who was the hardest puncher in all of professional heavyweight? Wait, that's not it. That's heavyweight. I thought I had it. got half of them written down, but keep going. But yeah, okay, bear with me. This is crazy. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, here we go. That's crazy. I got it right in front of me. My bad. My bad. We could have been going. Okay, yeah. Right. It's who are the hardest punchers in every boxing weight class? You ready to get that for you right now. That was separate from the part with the hardest punches of all time. Let's get that. Fast as I can type with my one finger. Hardest punches in every weight class. And we're gonna talk about some left hooks today too. But I think that's gonna be last. Next we're gonna talk about Shavers and Foreman. No, Shavers and Liston. What I'm talking about? Foreman. We got to do Shavers and Liston. We're gonna go deep on, not Foreman. Those were the big two when it comes to punching. Okay, almost there. Okay, we're gonna look at the hardest puncher ever in every boxing weight class. Okay, that's what we get ready to do right now. I should have had that up. Okay, first, heavyweight. Okay, now when talking about heavyweight, many fighters spring to mind. From the explosiveness of a Deontay Wilder, Vladimir Klitschko, and Mike Tyson, to the heavy-handed monsters like Foreman, Shavers, and David Tua. But we're gonna go with Foreman, okay? His consistency through the years was incredible. And the way he got power with his relatively poor technique boggles the mind. Foreman fought many technically greater fighters than he was, but that meant nothing when he lays them out. Foreman takes heavyweight, right? It might just be the heaviest puncher overall, but he's the best, hardest puncher at heavyweight. George Foreman. Okay, we go to cruiserweight. David Haye. Now, not a long list, right? This cruiserweight just been around since what, the early 80s, late 70s, something like that. But this is David Haye. When is this one? His aggression and explosiveness at cruiserweight shown as he tried to take everyone's head off on his obsession to become a heavyweight world champion as well. The Haymaker is the hardest puncher ever at cruiserweight. Okay? After cruiserweight is light heavyweight. That's Bob Foster. No. Yeah, Bob Foster. Hardest puncher ever at light heavyweight. Bob Foster. This was a hard one though. Because a lot of fighters at light heavyweight go up and down weight division. No. That's wrong. Nigel Benn. Yeah, Nigel Benn at light heavyweight. He did fight at light heavyweight. Nigel Benn is the representative for light heavyweight. Hardest hit at light heavyweight. I don't know how Bob Foster got in there, but there's Nigel Benn on the left. Okay. Oh. Wait a minute, I got mixed up. Now, Sergey Kovalev and Adonis Stevenson immediately spring to mind for their explosive, rangy punches and highlight reel knockout power. Now, Roy Jones Jr. was a phenom with ridiculous athleticism and lights out power with his speed. Yeah, it is Bob Foster, but Bob Foster is the hardest puncher ever at light heavyweight. His formidable frame and power in either hand puts him soundly on top. Okay? And he's in a lot of good company at light heavyweight. Bob Foster, and I erased him. But it's Bob Foster at light heavyweight. Nigel Benn is the representative for super middleweight. It's my Nigel Benn never fought at light heavyweight. Okay, Nigel Benn is the hardest hitting super middleweight ever. Okay? Another hard one. Same thing, like a lot of fighters go up and down for super middleweight. But Nigel Benn, the Dark Destroyer, he's known for his aggression. Benn had the power in both hands, right? So he's the hardest puncher ever at super middleweight. Middleweight, Gerald McClellan. He was a sad story, man. This guy, and it was against Nigel Benn. He got, I think he can hear or see. Now that's terrible that you can't hear or see. You can't communicate at all, right? I think he's completely blind and like 80% of his hearing, something like that. I mean, how do you communicate? I mean, if you're blind, people can talk to you. If you're deaf, you can see, but both? Oh my God, man! Damn, man, I can't not imagine that. Blind and you can't see or hear. You don't even know who you're talking to. Oh, man, that's crazy. But yeah, that's what happened to Gerald McClellan. But anyway, yeah, at super middleweight. Gerald McClellan was a knockout artist. His streak of round one knockouts was a thing of beauty. And his dismantling of another man on this list, Julian Jackson, and his tragic fight against Benn, that he came so close to winning, shows you what a phenomenal, elite level puncher the G-Man was. Yeah, it was against Nigel Benn that fight, man. Lost his hearing and his sight. Junior middleweight, Julian Jackson. Man, I can't even imagine that. But junior middleweight, Julian Jackson, hardest puncher ever at junior middleweight, Julian Jackson. That's him and Gerald McClellan right there. Julian Jackson on the right, Gerald McClellan on the left. Julian Jackson, no question about it. Julian was one of the hardest punchers you'll ever see. His highlight reel knockouts are special, and he had the power to keep any fighter honest. And if they weren't, he'd shut their lights out in a flash. Not the technically soundest, but one of the hardest punches in history. 100%, Julian Jackson. Welterweight, y'all already know. Welterweight. Stuff is all out of order. I don't even know who that is. That's Julian Jackson and Gerald McClellan again. But y'all already know at welterweight. There it is. Hardest puncher ever at welterweight, the man on the left. Okay. Now, Pepino Cuevas was a devastating puncher, and Sugar Ray Leonard could bang, while Sugar Ray Robinson may be the greatest fighter of them all with solid power. But Thomas Hearns takes this division. When you talk about the hardest puncher ever, the Hitman's rangy power was immense, and his work to the body brutal. Hearns could beat the life out of a horse. This should come as no surprise for anybody. Hearns being the hardest puncher ever at welterweight. He was a truly great power puncher, the Hitman. Okay, so now let's run through the rest of it right quick because Okay, 140. Kostya Tszyu, hardest puncher ever at 140. 135. Edwin Rosario. 130. Alexis Arguello. These are the hardest punchers ever at these divisions. 126. Sandy Sadler. We talked about him yesterday. 122. Wilfredo Gomez. 118. Carlos Durante. 115. Kosai Galaxy. 112. The great Jimmy Wild, UK fighter. 108. Michael Carvajal. 105. Ricardo Lopez. Those are the greatest fighters ever at their weights. Now let's talk about Sonny Liston and George Foreman. No, Ernie Shavers. Sonny Liston and Ernie Shavers now. Okay. Here's Shavers. Talk about these two. We're talking about the greatest punchers of all time. Sonny Liston and Ernie Shavers. How about them two? Okay. Who is the scariest puncher in boxing? Okay. Not just talking about the hardest puncher in boxing history. Who is the scariest? And Sonny Liston and Ernie Shavers were both scary punchers. Okay, Ernie Shavers first. He's the scariest puncher in boxing history. I got two of them. Ernie Shavers and Sonny Liston. We're going to talk about Shavers first. Okay. There we go. Nope, that's not it. There we go. Okay. Now, Ernie Shavers is generally considered the hardest one-punch heavyweight and fighter, period, of all time. But old timers whisper the name Sonny Liston in awe. Okay, let's talk about Shavers first. Now, in an interview after he retired, Shavers said, "Only God hits harder than me. Only God, that's it." Ernie D. Shavers was born August 31st, 1945 in Garland, Alabama, to a dirt poor sharecropping family. It was not a good time. Shavers used to recollect to be born black in the South. At 5 years old, Ernie and his family fled their sharecropping farm in the town of Garland, Alabama, 100 miles northeast of Mobile, to escape the Ku Klux Klan. Now, Ernie doesn't remember all of what happened, but the deadly and vicious reputation of the Klan forced his family to flee after his father had gotten in debt to one of the Klansmen and was unable to pay. At 5, we moved to Ohio. Best thing that ever happened to me, recalled Shavers in his book, Welcome to the Big Time. Now, Shavers explained his power thusly. I grew up on a farm, and that's what made me strong. Chopping trees increases your hand and back muscles. Chopping wood for the winter, thousands of trees. Tossing bales of wheat, every young man should spend a few years on a farm. Now, Ernie did not start boxing until he was 22 years old, and he never became much of a ring technician. But Lord, could he hit. Lord, could he hit. There's always debate, but interestingly, the debate has never been among fighters. It has been among boxing writers who love to parse records. What the real experts, fighters, say about how hard Shavers hit. The ones best able to offer an opinion were the great fighters who had the joy of being hit by Shavers. What did they say? What did the great trainers say who had to prepare for him? What did the Hall of Fame writers and historians who watched him fight say? Hall of Fame and all-time greats, Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes, both said Shavers' power, especially his one-punch power, was simply unrivaled. But they and others also said a lot more. Ernie Shavers was a puncher, but he couldn't always take a punch. He was punched out by Ron Lyle, Jerry Quarry, and Ron the Bluff's Butcher Stander, a Nebraska beer drinker who was more of a barroom brawler than a puncher. He was outpointed by 2 journeymen, Bob Stallings and Stan Johnson, and had a 10-round draw with Jimmy Young not long after he knocked Young out, senseless, in their first meeting. So why was he so feared? And was he the hardest puncher of all time? Angelo Dundee, the legendary trainer, said, Ernie wasn't really a good boxer, but his power was amazing. Real fighters knew enough to avoid him. His incredible one-punch power made him more than dangerous. George Foreman told him personally when Ernie lobbied for a fight. When Ernie asked George Foreman for a fight, George simply told Ernie, hell no. George said, hell no. I'm not fighting you. Smoking Joe Frazier told Shavers bluntly when Shavers asked him for a shot, no way, Ernie. Smoking Joe told him no way. Big George said hell no. Smoking Joe said no way. And when fighters had to fight him, they left in awe. Tex Cobb said, Ernie could punch you in the neck with his right hand and break your ankle. Tex also said, if a man hit any harder than Ernie, I'd shoot him. You know what Muhammad Ali said after his fight? Ernie hit me so hard he shook my kinfolks back in Africa. Ron Lyle said, hey man, that's the hardest I've ever been hit in my life. And George Foreman could punch, but none of them could hit like Ernie Shavers did. When Ernie hit you, the lights went out. I can laugh about it now, but at the time when I was fighting him, it was not funny. James Quick Tiller said, Shavers hit so hard, he turned horse piss into gasoline. Wow, that's hard. Tiller said, he hit me so hard, he brought back tomorrow. When he hit me, I was seeing pink rats and cats and animals smoking cigarettes. I was in the land of make-believe. He said when asked later about his comments, the baddest mother effer I fought was Ernie Shavers. That mother effer can make July into June and made me jump over the mother effing moon. That mother effer hit so hard, he'll bring back tomorrow. He hit me so hard, I thought I was on the corner smoking a cigarette and eating a Spam sandwich. That's how hard Ernie hit. Larry Holmes, comparing Shavers to Tyson, said, Ernie hit me harder than any other fighter, including Mike Tyson. Ernie hit me and I was face down on the canvas hearing saxophones. Jimmy Young, who was knocked cold by Shavers in his first fight, but survived the second, said, I was not going to get tagged by him again. No, sir. Joe Bugner, in his book, said that the hardest puncher he had ever faced was Ernie Shavers. Joe Bugner said, nobody should be able to hit that hard. It should be illegal. Wow. Joe Bugner said it should be illegal for somebody to hit that hard. Okay. Nor were fighters and trainers the only ones who saw and marveled at Shavers share overwhelming power. Hall of Fame sports journalist Jerry Eisenberg said of Shavers, rarely did Ernie hit anyone below the belt, the neck. He was a headhunter and a good one. For me, Shavers was the greatest one-punch hitter I have ever seen. When he floored Larry Holmes, I thought Holmes was dead. The guys who were on the receiving end of Shavers' power, fighters from the golden age, the greatest era ever of heavyweights in the fighters, best of the best generation of heavyweights ever, said no human being ever hit any harder, and it was not overrated. After retirement, Shavers found the Lord and became a born-again Christian. He began speaking at rallies all over the world. Following his ordainment, he began ministering in the American Southwest, and then he moved to England. In 2013, Shavers wrote his second book, Only God Hits Harder, The Life of Ernie Shavers. Now, preparing for the publication, Ernie said, I thank the Lord a million times that I'm changed and in perfect health. I'm in great shape. Since I was 22, I've been taking care of myself. I'm even going to be a spokesperson for one of the best products that I've ever used. All I can say is that it's just for men. Okay? Now, we talked about this before. Sylvester Stallone, as he prepared to cast Rocky III, asked Shavers if he would spar with him as part of the actor's preparation for the movie. Stallone even flirted with the idea of casting Shavers in the role of James Clubber Lang. That was Mr. T's role, remember? Shavers taught Stallone the difference between a real fighter and that fake-ass movie fighter Rocky, okay? At their first meeting, when Shavers asked him, when Stallone asked Ernie to spar, Shavers was careful not to hurt him and only threw soft jabs. But Stallone, convinced he was really a tough guy, began yelling at Ernie to open up. Shavers then threw one real punch to Stallone's stomach, and that sent him off to the bathroom vomiting. And that was the end of Ernie Shavers. Stallone even thinking about Shavers getting that role in that movie. Stallone was a very nice guy. He kept saying, you can't hold back. Make it look realistic. Open up, I want realistic. After he recovered from that one punch, Shavers said, he flew me home first class. His brothers were really good to me too. But Ernie said after he hit Sylvester Stallone with that just one real punch, Sylvester Stallone flew him home. called Mr. T up. You want to play Clubber Lang, Mr. T? Ernie said Sylvester flew him home. Ernie showed him the difference between that fake Rocky stuff and a real fighter. Okay, so now, Sonny Liston. Let's talk about Sonny. The other scary puncher. Yeah, see, that is scary. So Shavers is definitely one of the most scariest punchers of all time, no doubt. Now to Sonny Liston. But George Foreman himself says Sonny Liston was the hardest puncher he ever faced when he sparred with him after the Olympics in the 60s. Sonny was at least 40 years old then, and probably closer to 50. But George said he had never felt power like Sonny's, and that Liston was the only man ever able to force him backwards by sheer brute strength in the ring. In general, people have forgotten how dominant Liston was in his prime. Ring Magazine ranks Sonny Liston as the number 7 greatest heavyweight of all time, while boxing writer Herb Goldman ranked him second. Boxing writer and historian Springs Toledo, in his book, The Gods of War, believes that Liston, when at his peak in the mid-1950s, would be favored to beat heavyweight champion in the modern era, with the exception of Muhammad Ali. I would go along with that. All of them. Maybe Ali too. Talent-wise, oh, wait a minute. I thought I put it up there. Okay, I'm back. Okay, where were we? Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston. Yeah, talent-wise, Sonny Liston was perhaps the best of all time, other than Ali. Record-wise, we do not really know. He got started late, had constant legal problems, and was the most feared and avoided fighter in history. Only President Kennedy, asking Patterson to fight him, got him a title shot after years as the mandatory number 1 contender. Yeah, President John F. Kennedy had to ask Ford Patterson to fight him. Now, Sonny's first pro fight lasted 33 seconds. Liston leveled Don Smith with the first punch he threw. And Smith was out for 3 minutes, okay? The man was out for 3 minutes. First punch of the fight Liston threw. 33 seconds into the fight, and his opponent was out for 3 minutes, and that was his first fight, okay? From February of 1959 to his march to the title, Sonny decimated the top 10 ratings, knocking out 8 of the top 10 contenders. Only Ingemar Johansson and Henry Cooper of those top 10 fighters during Liston's prime years escaped beatings by him because they declined to fight him. Okay? They both just said straight up they wasn't fighting him. Wasn't no shame in their game. They just came out and said, I'm not fighting Sonny Liston. Okay? Only 2 in the top 10 in his prime that he did not beat. Zora Farley said, you can't believe how strong Sonny is until you feel it. Now, Sonny Liston came by that strength from a lifetime of pain and from being just born strong. You know, out on the farm and everything. You know, we talked about this before. When the mule used to pull the plow, and when the mule died, Sonny's father hooked him to the plow. He was just 13 years old. Okay? He hooked him to the plow when the mule died. And he was beaten and abused as a child. And he grew up to stay in trouble. And even in prison, other inmates were terrified of making Sonny mad. Okay? Sonny grew up in a world with no kindness and no forgiveness. And he gave none to anyone. Okay? Now this is a good example. It puts it in perspective. A good example of Sonny's sheer brute strength was an exercise he devised in training camp of loading an industrial-sized wheelbarrow full of rocks and wheeling it up and down a hill. George Foreman, aged 19, went from winning gold in the Olympics to working with Sonny Liston, who by then was in his 40s, maybe 50. Okay? Now, in Foreman's training with the old man, George could only carry one wheelbarrow for every 3 that Sonny carried. Okay? Up and down the hill. Sonny beat George 3-1 carrying the wheel. George would go up 1 time. Sonny had been up and down 3 times by then. Okay? And the man was damn near 50. George was 19. His strength, said Foreman, you just can't believe how strong he was. Foreman later took Sonny's idea and pulled the car up and down the hill to train. George Foreman was asked who the strongest fighter he ever saw was, and he answered Sonny Liston. And he said, strongest fighter? Sonny was the strongest man I ever saw. Rocky Marciano said of Liston, he isn't faking his toughness and his strength. It's just something you got to see. And that jab, he can knock a man out with the jab. And Rocky said that only 3 men in their prime he would have never beat. He said Muhammad Ali in his prime, Joe Louis in his prime, and Sonny Liston in his prime. Okay. Cleveland Williams said, no human being hits as hard as Sonny Liston. And Williams went on to say, you cannot describe his strength. No man should be that strong. How powerful was Sonny Liston? Boxing writer Charles Farrell wrote that, I asked Floyd Patterson who the hardest puncher he'd ever faced was. I thought I knew the answer. But Floyd Patterson surprised me and said Ingemar Johansson. So I said, but Floyd, you fought Sonny Liston twice. Floyd looked at me and said, oh, I thought you meant somebody I was going to win against. I had a chance to beat, right? You want an impressive knockout. How about Sonny Liston knocking on Wayne Withea, who had never been off his feet in his life prior to fighting Sonny in 1958 in 69 seconds of the first round. A man had not only never been knocked out, had never been knocked down in his career. Sonny stopped him in 69 seconds of the first round, okay? Liston dropped Bethea for the first time in his career, knocking out 7 teeth with 9 more broken, all with 1 punch. And guess what? The punch was a jab, okay? Knocked out 7 teeth, broke 9 with 1 jab. You're talking about a scary puncher. But Thayer was never the same again, and he said of Liston, he must have had a horseshoe in his glove. Nor was that the only time Sonny hit men with unbelievable power that eclipses anything anyone else has ever done. Listen to this one. In the mid-1960s, Sonny sparred with Ray Schoninger in Denver. He hit Ray so hard with a jab, and Ray was wearing headgear. He split the stitching in his headgear. His fist went through the stitching in the headgear and knocked out 3 teeth, okay? He busted through the headgear. This was a jab. Not even a power. Well, the jab was a power punch for Sonny. I give it say not even a power punch, but every punch for Sonny was a power punch. So a jab from Sonny Liston was a power punch. But he split through the man's headgear, split it open, and knocked out 3 teeth. When Sonny knocked out number 2 ranked Zora Farley, they thought Farley might be dead. And when Farley finally regained consciousness, he asked Sonny, who was standing next to the referee, what happened? Sonny said, I knocked you out. Nino Valdez, as he lay dying from cancer, drugged heavily with morphine, was asked by his family if it hurt. And he said, not as hard, it doesn't hurt as bad as getting hit by Sonny Liston. Johnny Taco, who worked with George Foreman and Mike Tyson and Sonny Liston, said of the 3, Liston hit the hardest and was the strongest. So did Emanuel Stewart, who set up Liston. He was unbelievably strong, and his punching is like a wrecking machine. And Sonny Liston had that power before he even began fighting as a pro. The athletic director at Missouri State Penitentiary, where Sonny served time in the 1940s, was a priest, Father Alois Stevens, who took a liking to Sonny and suggested to him he try boxing. And Father Stevens supported Sonny in making parole and brought him to the attention of boxing trainers on the outside, right? Now, Bob Mead's book, Liston and Ali, The Ugly Bear and the Boy Who Would Be King, recounts that to help Sonny show his potential to trainers, Father Stevens organized a sparring session with a local St. Louis heavyweight named Thurman Wilson. And Sonny was still an amateur. This guy was a heavyweight. This heavyweight was 5 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw as a prospect. So the priest organized a fight with this guy to show Sonny's talent to the promoters and trainers, right? Showed us the potential. Now, the pro fighter expected no trouble with a man who had never had a sanctioned fight, just coming out of prison. Sonny had never had a sanctioned fight, amateur or professional, and he was just coming out of prison. Now, the story goes that after 2 rounds, Wilson quit, saying, y'all better get me out of this ring before this man kills me. That's what he said. Y'all better get me out of this ring before this man kills me. And guess what? Liston beat this man so bad that day, 2 rounds. Wilson never fought again after that. Never fought again. Okay? Never fought again. Wow. Now, Sonny's first pro fight, like I said, lasted 33 seconds. Knocked him out with the first punch, and it was out 3 minutes. Muhammad Ali said, Sonny Liston was the best fighter of all time other than me. He said, of all the men I fought in boxing, Sonny Liston was the scariest. And Ali said that's why he was acting so crazy, especially before that first Liston fight. He said he was acting so crazy to hide how scared he was. He said he was terrified. At the press conferences, the weigh-ins, that's why he was acting like he was. He said he was hiding how scared he was of Liston. So he act crazy to hide that. Because he said he was terrified the whole time. But when he got in that ring, all that went away. The talent just came to the fore. Then, Now, George Foreman said Sonny Liston could have whipped any other heavyweight in history except Ali. Smoking Joe Frazier asked if Larry Holmes had the best jab he had ever seen. Smoking Joe said, nope, Ali's was better. Then he paused and said, and Sonny Liston, of course, Sir Henry Cooper, the European and British heavyweight champion who twice fought Ali and had a who's who of opponents in the 50s and 60s, had one name glaringly missing from his resume, Sonny Liston. When asked why, Perry Cooper said, I don't even want to see Sonny Liston walking down the street, let alone get in the ring with him. No other fighter in history has destroyed the top 10 the way Sonny did. Liston does not merely defeat his opponents, he breaks them, chains them, haunts them, leaves them flinching from his punches in their dreams. In the end, it's a tie between the hardest and scariest punchers of all time. It's a tie between Ernie Shavers and Sonny Liston. Okay? We'll call it a tie. Yep, there you have it. But the hardest punches in heavyweight boxing history. We had something on some great left hooks too. Guys that throw some great left hooks. I gotta go somewhere at 4, so I put the link in. I know I'll be on there till like 5 o'clock, so we'll get some link time tomorrow. But yeah, we got some. Let's start this. All these guys that throw these great left hooks. Okay, I think it starts with Oscar De La Hoya. Anybody see Oscar on it anyway? There he is. That's Oscar and Sweepy. Right there. Oscar was a bad man in that ring. And that resume, Oscar had an old school resume. In the 90s, nobody was doing stuff like this anymore. Oscar fought 4 top 10 opponents in 1 year in the 90s. Okay? I used to know who they were. Jesse James Leger, he fought one of those brothers. It was 2 brothers that was bad in the 90s too. I forget their names. He fought one of them. 4 top 10 opponents in 1 year. Nobody was doing that type of stuff in the 90s anymore. No. Maybe 1. 2 at the most, but maybe Oscar fought 4. And 1 fighter of the year. They said, Oscar, you can fight 2 top 10 and then fight 2 lower level opponents. No, Oscar said, I won all top 10 and beat all of them too. I think it was 96 when he won fighter of the year. Okay. Let's look at some of these guys that throw these great left hooks. Oscar De La Hoya had a fire left hook. Can any boxing list be complete without this man? After all, he is one of the greatest boxers to step into the ring, with 6 championships in different weight classes. Oscar's style was a perfect combination of speed, power, and precision. Fighting was in his blood. Oscar's amateur career was absolutely amazing. He had an incredible record of 223 wins with just 5 losses. And in 1992, he dominated at the Barcelona Olympics, winning the gold medal in the lightweight division. That's when he got the nickname, the Golden Boy. After going pro in 1992, Oscar's career skyrocketed. He was just too good with his impressive speed, power, and technical skills. But it was that killer left hook that really stole the spotlight. This punch, executed with finesse and brute force, became his signature move. Oscar took on boxing legends like Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, and Manny Pacquiao throughout his career. Oscar De La Hoya, yeah, that left hook, that became Oscar's signature punch. Who was that? That's Oscar too. Was that Oscar right there? Well, I don't know what. I done messed the whole thing up. I'm sorry. Wow. Yeah, we can really talk about some left hooks, but I don't know. Maybe not. Here we go. That's definitely Oscar right there. No, it ain't. Right there, I'm sorry. So who's next? David Tua. David Tua. Young David Tua. David Tua was a Samoan. And like most Samoans, he was built like an absolute unit. This man was a pure knockout artist, and his left hook was his most deadly weapon. It didn't matter if you were taller, bigger, or more experienced than him. Tua's left hook could send anyone to the canvas. Even though he's Samoan, he rocked the 1992 Barcelona Olympics for New Zealand, bagged a bronze medal in the heavyweight division, setting the stage for his pro career. Now, as a pro, Tua's compact build and explosive power quickly grabbed the attention of the boxing community. Though he was shorter than many heavyweight fighters, his strength was undeniable. One of Tua's most epic fights happened in 2000 when he took on former world champion Michael Moorer. Tua's left hook was absolutely unstoppable, taking down Moorer in a lightning fast 30 seconds of the first round. But what made Tua really great was his humility. Tua was and is a real man through and through. You'll be talking about some great left hooks right now. Okay. He had a pretty good one. He had it all. Floyd Mayweather Jr. I get on Floyd sometimes, but he was the great one. TBE 50-0. Floyd Mayweather Jr. seemed destined for the ring. Boxing was in his blood also. His dad, Floyd Sr., and his uncle, Jeff and Roger, were all pros. His amateur days, stellar. He danced his way to a bronze medal at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, and he cheated. And that was just the beginning, but he got cheated. I told you, remember when they was announcing the scores, and they was like, and the winner is, the referee had Floyd's arm on the way up. Yeah. Go back and watch it. I saw it live on TV. Man said, and the winner is, and the referee was taking Floyd's arm up. Who knows better than the referee? But he had to put it back down because they cheated and gave it to the other guy. And Floyd said in the interview after the fight, he said that was his last amateur fight, right? He said, I'm never going to experience that feeling again, losing. And everybody like, yeah, Floyd, you're going to lose a couple as a pro, but he never experienced that feeling again after that. Mr. 50-0. Yeah. Now, throughout his career, Floyd took on the best. Names like Gaddy, De La Hoya, Pacquiao, and Canelo. He danced, jabbed, and hooked his way through them all. Different weight classes? No problem. He snagged titles in 5 of them. And then there's that record, 50-0. Undefeated. It's a thing of beauty and a testament to his skill. Floyd Money Mayweather. Okay. Do another one. Okay. I don't even know who's next. I don't know who that is. Oh, Danny Garcia. Let's talk about Danny. Danny had a nice left hook too. Didn't he? Remember? Danny, we're going to be the last one. Danny Garcia. We're going to close it out with Danny. I can't find Danny. There he is, Danny Garcia. Now, Danny Garcia is one of those boxers who makes you sit up and pay attention. Philly has a rich boxing history, and Danny, well, he's right up there with the best of them. Now, growing up, Danny had boxing in his veins. Trained by his father, Angel, he learned the ropes literally from an early age. And it wasn't long before people noticed that the kid had some serious talent. Fast hands, sharp reflexes, and a left hook that can make you see stars. As he climbed the ranks, Danny faced some real heavy hitters, names like Amir Khan, Lucas Matisse, and Keith Thurman. And more often than not, he came out on top. One of his standout moments when he unified the super lightweight division. That was a big deal, and it cemented his place as one of the top dogs in boxing. But it wasn't just his wins that made headlines. It was his style. Danny wasn't just a brawler. He was a thinker. He had this way of reading his opponents, figuring out their game, and then turning the tables on them. Danny Garcia. Okay, there you have it. That was just some great left hook pause. Some great fighters with left hooks. And tomorrow we're going to look at boxing in Algeria. Yep, the country, Algeria. Tomorrow. Okay? But I appreciate the people that came through today. Okay? This was the best show ever. And the less people ever. But it's all good, you know. We'll be back tomorrow with boxing in Algeria. Okay. Define Arnie, Mike Grimm, and Miss Cass. Appreciate y'all 100,000%. And we're gonna Algeria tomorrow. And Friday, I don't know who the profile is yet. I'll let you know tomorrow. Okay. I know next month, the first Friday, that next active Friday next month going to be Amanda Serrano. You know, first Friday in August, going to be Amanda. Yeah, but I hope y'all enjoyed the hardest punches of all time. Okay, I enjoyed it. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Everybody have a great afternoon.